So first of all, let me assert my firm belief that the only thing we have to fear is fear itself.
During a time where America was quickly falling into economic depression, the people became extremely discouraged until a man, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, came into office. FDR brought with him the Fireside Chats, a revolutionary form of communication, which were able to boost the morale of the people due to their newfound trust in the federal government and invite them into his living room for a night.
Brother, can you spare a dime? Once in khaki suits.
If you think about somebody who was really pushing at the limits of democracy with the idea that economic security of citizens was essential to democratic life.
Say, don't you remember? They called me Al. It was Al all the time.
Following a major stock market crash, Americans experienced job loss, extreme poverty, and the feeling of hopelessness. After living through Herbert Hoover's presidency, the people demanded change. Hoover believed in a laissez-faire economy and had very little communication with the American people. Hoover's Great Depression strategy was rugged individualism, which can be described as self-help. Hoover also used a tactic called trickle-down economics, where he provided large corporations with money, which in theory would trickle down to more jobs for the working class. FDR also understood the importance of self-help, but he thought that if he provided jobs directly, the people would strive for economic stability all on their own. Within his first 100 days in office, FDR created a massive legislation or economic reform plan. FDR's New Deal was a plan for economic relief, recovery, and reform. These three words embodied the next decade in the United States. With this plan, FDR strove to slowly piece together a nation which was completely ripped apart.
And in fact, when people recollected the Fireside Chats, almost everyone said they actually felt like he was sitting in their living room, which of course was a whole new phenomenon because it's so different than reading a newspaper.
FDR's Fireside Chats were truly a revolutionary form of communication from the president to the people. FDR was a persuasive speaker and was able to make the people trust in him in a way that they had never trusted a president before. By addressing the citizens as my friends, he was able to speak to the hearts and the minds of the citizens. He strove to make his chats understandable to the working men of the nation. His speeches were simplified to a language that all people, rich, poor, old, and young, would understand. FDR consistently broadcasted the government's progress to inform the people of the nation's economic status, so that the people would regain trust and hope in the nation's success, as well as in their own success. Hope.
The Congress has devoted itself to the arduous task of formulating legislation necessary to the country's welfare. It has made and is making distinct progress.
Intimacy. Trust.
And I want to tell our citizens that the National Congress, Republicans and Democrats alike, showed a devotion to public welfare and a realization of the emergency and the necessity for speed that it is difficult to match in all our history.
These were the three major ideals that FDR brought alongside him when he became president. The morale of the nation completely shifted due to FDR and his Fireside Chats. The radio was crucial to FDR's presidency. He was unable to stand and give speeches for long periods of time due to the fact that he was immobilized from polio, so the radio was a way to deliver his message to the masses of the people instead of just one crowd. Although the radio was important to the success of his speeches, FDR's message was the key that unlocked the hope in each American. FDR's intimacy, displayed through his fireside chats, brought Americans to understand the deeper meaning of why things were being done in the nation, which steered them towards confidence and support in the federal government. Throughout his presidency, FDR was able to create a more useful and more efficient way of exchanging ideas with the public. Through his New Deal program, FDR developed the Agricultural Adjustment Act, which brought direct and effective help to farmers by providing loans to slow the crop production rate, in an attempt to relieve them from the Depression and integrate them back into the nation. Prior to FDR, the federal government and American citizens were almost two separate spheres, and FDR, through countless encounters with different American people, was able to increase and improve the exchange of ideas and communication between the federal government and the people of the United States. Trust in the federal government was an unknown concept to many Americans during this time. Getting the citizens out of depression would require the trust of all Americans. FDR was able to achieve this through the fireside chats. On April 28, 1935, with unemployment skyrocketing, FDR used the fireside chats as a platform to communicate his works relief programs with the country. The Public Works Administration, Works Progress Administration, and the Civil Works Administrations were all part of FDR's plan to decrease the unemployment rate by mandating infrastructure within the nation to create millions of jobs. His main goal was to make his messages transparent so that the working class would begin to restore faith that the government was working to their aid.
Our problem is to put to work 3.5 million employable persons, men and women, who are now on the relief rolls. We are losing no time in getting the government's vast work relief program underway.
The fireside chats were a prime example of FDR exploring a new medium of communication to those that he could not reach through a typical live speech. Before the fireside chats, the speeches of presidents were not very accessible. FDR created a way for people to get to know him without having to travel. The Americans now had the means to connect with the federal government. There was no other president who received as many letters as FDR. Compared to Hoover, who received 800 letters a day, FDR averaged about 8,000 letters a day, and each fireside chat generated up to 450,000 letters. This is a genuine representation of the confidence and the trust that he bestowed upon the American people. Citizens wanted to write to him, sometimes saying how his words or his new ideas changed their lives.
I feel such a thrill, my feet won't keep still when this...
Dear Mr. President, you have just finished speaking over the radio. Until you spoke, I had been dreading Christmas Eve a little, but I want you to know that what you have just said so simply and honestly has made everything seem right, and I'm not dreading Christmas any longer. As you spoke, it seemed as if my husband Alan were sitting here beside me listening, as we have listened to you together so many times. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. Gratefully yours, Helen Powell Schaffler.
The ways the fireside chats help the nation is infinite, although we tend to focus on the larger aspects such as trust and morale. Therefore, FDR's fireside chats created a snowflake effect. Just as each snowflake is one of a kind, the fireside chats affected each citizen in a unique way personal to them, meaning that every time one tuned in, their personal encounter with the president sparked a reaction that aided in the recovery of a struggling nation. The fireside chats set precedents that created an entire legacy. All presidents to follow FDR were now required to be innovative with new technology and create an intimacy unique to them with the American people. The fireside chats explored a new medium of communication and exchanged information with the general public, all while warming the hearts and hearths of American homes.